What's up, Barefoot crew? Back with yet another barefoot shoe review. Today we have the Vivo Barefoot Gobi 2 leather sneaker. Let's get into it. I'm gonna splice this into the video real quick just to preface. I'm about to go into a story, like one of those videos that you are trying to watch a recipe tutorial and they're talking about how their grandma that passed away 3 years ago, they found this recipe in an ancient lost bookcase in the attic or something like that. I'm about to enter that story, so if you want to skip past it, skip past it. But I feel like this story is pretty relevant to my story, and honestly, I just want to share it with you guys. So I want to share a quick story about Vivo Barefoot and really how Vivo Barefoot birthed who I am today, which is Barefoot Will. So way back in the day, 2016, I graduated physical therapist assistant school. After making my graduation, I worked within a clinic that was in a small town in the middle of Arkansas amongst 2 Division II colleges in that town and about 3 surrounding high schools. We got a very high athlete population that came through this clinic. We were attached to a gym, the whole shebang. Very quickly into my therapy venture, my therapy career, I noticed that a lot of my athlete patients had been patients in the PT clinic before, so they were repeated injury patients. So I began my research journey, learning everything I could outside of the textbook knowledge that I gained from school, because after all, the real world is definitely different than what's in the textbooks. Very, very soon after I started my own research, I came across a Move You post for Vivo Barefoot shoes. That's obviously a very big oxymoron, right? Barefoot shoe. It catches a lot of people's eye. It caught mine. Next thing I knew it, a pair of Vivo Barefoot shoes were sitting on my front doorstep. Back then, I believe it was the Tracker, like mid. It was an all black shoe. I can't even remember what the specific model was, but that shoe completely changed how I was treating patients in the clinic, just because of the results that I felt for myself. Everybody knows the typical barefoot shoe epiphany that happens, and that's exactly what happened to me. And I began to apply my newfound foundational knowledge to how I was treating all of my patients in the clinic. So from that point on, the rabbit hole was deep, and obviously that has led me to where I am today, and that is partnering up with Vivo Barefoot. I guess you could say partner. I'm an affiliate for them now, so if you are interested in purchasing this shoe or any other barefoot shoe from Vivo Barefoot, you can be sure and use my code BarefootWill, no spaces, plug that in, and that's going to be good for a 20% discount. All right, we're back to the shoe review. Enough with grandma's recipe attic story. First thing is going to be aesthetic, and this shoe is incredibly aesthetically appealing. Now that I'm thinking about it and I have it in my hands again, I was a big fan of the Nike SB Stefan Janoski shoes when I was in high school. This really does have kind of that Janoski look to it. It's got that little bit of a bold collab logo on the top here. It's just got that overall kind of skater type of look to it. And that to me is just one of my favorite styles of shoes, especially for casual and streetwear. But it's definitely eye-catchingly different. A lot of it maybe because it is a barefoot shoe with the wide toe box, but you're not going to get that initial barefoot shoe look. This specific colorway goes well with a variety of different looks. You can definitely wear jeans with these. You can wear kind of like a khaki short. I've actually worn these to church a couple of times too, because you can dress these up and you can also dress them down a little bit. With that being said, the application of the shoe, it's a little bit more of like just a streetwear shoe. This is not something that I would reach for to go work out in, although I feel like it would do relatively well in the gym. I feel like the shoe would do fine in that situation, but this is definitely more of what I would call like a lifestyle shoe. Getting into a little bit more detail as far as the construction of the shoe and how it applies to aesthetic, this is a detached tongue shoe, so it's definitely not a sock style fit. So the laces do factor in as far as the comfort level goes, and to me, the lace color on this specific model blends really well. It's not too outstanding, it's not too bold. A black lace on this shoe I think would actually look pretty good, just considering it does have a little bit of the black labeling from the collab that Vivo did. And while I'm talking about the tongue, there's this really cool message on the underside of the tongue. It says, "This footwear is made from 98% natural materials, find out how we'll get to 100% here at vivobarefoot.com. Really, really cool feature of this shoe, trying to get as sustainable as possible. Vivo's doing a great job of leaning that direction. So underneath that detached tongue, looking at the inside of the shoe, there is a removable cork insole, which I have found pleasantly nice and comfortable. I've actually not worn this shoe without the insole just because the insole has been incredibly comfortable. And to me, the ground feel of the shoe has been more than adequate with the added insole in there, and it just makes a little bit of that pavement walking a little bit more tolerable. Moving a little bit deeper into the construction of the shoe, the sole of the shoe is actually sewn on, which is very, very nice considering this is a little bit more of an upscale-ish shoe. You're going to pay just a little bit more unless you use my discount code for 20% off. Barefoot will, no spaces. Anyway, got to plug that again. But the sewn on sole, so with a lot of barefoot shoes, because of the tremendous amount of flexibility, if the sole is glued on, then there are tendencies for, at the flex points, for the sole to kind of come unglued and detached, and then you have water entering the bottom of your shoe, and that just sucks, to be honest. This is a direction that a lot of barefoot shoe companies need to head in, is the sewn on sole, because of the durability aspect. With the mention of durability, this shoe, I've definitely put it through its paces. This sole is holding up very, very well. The leather of the shoe is wearing in very, very comfortably. It is definitely shaping to the shape of my foot. It is flexing exactly and seamlessly where I need it to, especially at the distal end of the toe. And with it being leather, it is a little bit easier to clean, which is nice, especially with the lighter shade of leather. I actually spilled a little bit of coffee on them this morning and did a little bit of a wipe job, and it came right off. This shoe, because of the detached tongue, might be a good idea for people with a little bit higher volume feet. Because of that detached tongue, you can loosen up the laces. That tongue is going to raise up if you needed to, or if you have a lower volume foot like myself, you're able to cinch the laces down and the shoe very nicely hugs the foot. Of course, my most important feature on any shoe to ever exist is going to be the toe box, and the toe box of this shoe is very nicely roomy. To me, Vivo in the past, and even some of their current models, I believe it's the Trail FG, which is just like the trail version of their tennis shoe. To me, the toe box on that specific shoe is too narrow for my toe splay. My toe splay is pretty wide. However, the toe box on this shoe accepts my toe splay graciously. And they did a great job, in my opinion, in hiding the width of the toe box of the shoe by this little bit of inlet of the material that kind of comes into the toe box. It just does a nice job of hiding the little bit of width that you would see in most barefoot shoes. And like all the rest of the barefoot shoes from Vivo, you're going to have a zero drop sole, a nice pliable, bendable, flexible sole, very little restriction at all. There is just a little bit of stiffness in the heel of this shoe, which in my opinion is kind of nice. I don't really like a ton of loose fitting heeled shoes. To me, it can create a little bit of instability for the foot to slip out of the shoe if you have a lower volume foot like me. To me, the construction of the rear of the shoe, how the sole actually comes up the rear just a little bit, was a nice added touch, not only for durability reasons, but for the comfort of the shoe kind of staying on the foot a little more. As far as sizing for this shoe, I went with the men's 43. I typically wear a 43 in most barefoot shoes and a 10.5 in most US sizing shoes, and this shoe fits absolutely perfectly like a glove. It is so comfortable, the absolute perfect size. I've tried to kind of find some downfalls of this shoe just to make this review have a little bit more nuance, but if I'm being totally honest, I don't think that there are any downfalls. I've really waited to put out this review just to see if there was anything that I disliked or that was noticeable, and to be honest, it's pretty hard to impress me to the point where I can't find anything. I've put a lot of time in various barefoot shoes, and this shoe passes all the tests with flying colors. It really is one of my favorite barefoot shoes, not only from Vivo, but out of all the brands that are available. This shoe is definitely within my top 10, maybe even my top 5. So with all that being said, that wraps up the review for the Vivo Barefoot Gobi 2 leather sneaker. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Be sure to use my discount code during checkout to get that 20% off discount. Once again, it's Barefoot Will, no spaces at all. You guys can grab yourself a pair of these sneakers or any other barefoot shoe with that discount code. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Like I mentioned earlier, they also sent me the Primus Lite 3.5, so be looking for that review coming up soon. We will catch you guys on the next one.